Try this for a second. Picture taking a chunk of land, roughly the size of the continental United States, and cutting it completely loose from the rest of the world. No land bridges, no way in, no way out. Just open ocean on every side, for tens of millions of years straight. No new animals wandering in from somewhere else. No new competition showing up to shake things up. Just whatever was already living there, left completely alone to do whatever it wanted with all that time. What do you think would happen? You don't actually have to guess, because this already happened, for real, and the answer is Australia. For over 30 million years, this continent sat almost completely sealed off from everywhere else on Earth, and what grew there in that time is honestly one of the strangest experiments nature has ever run. Marsupial lions with a thumb built like a switchblade, a giant duck taller than a grown man, reptiles that stuck around millions of years after they'd already died out everywhere else, and more venomous animals crammed into one place than anywhere else on the planet. None of this was an accident. It's what happens when you leave evolution alone in a locked room for 30 million years with nothing to disturb it. Here's how that room actually got locked in the first place. Roughly 35 million years ago, Australia finished pulling away from Antarctica, its last real connection to any other landmass. Before that, it had been attached, on and off, to a bigger southern supercontinent for basically its entire history. But once that final link snapped, Australia was on its own. It started drifting north, alone, across open water, and it just kept drifting, with nothing but ocean around it in every direction, for the next several million years. No other continent was close enough to reach. Nothing new could walk in, swim in, or wander across. Whatever animals happened to be on board when the ship left the dock, that was the entire cast list, forever, or at least until something changed that. Now here's the part that actually matters for everything that comes next. At the exact moment Australia set sail on its own, its mammal population looked completely different from the rest of the planets. On most other continents, a newer, more advanced style of mammal, the placental kind, the kind that carries its babies fully developed inside the body instead of finishing them off in a pouch, was quietly taking over. Placental mammals were spreading fast almost everywhere, and in most places, they were outcompeting the older, pouched marsupial mammals into extinction. But that changeover simply hadn't reached Australia yet by the time the continent broke away. So while placental mammals kept steamrolling their way across the rest of the world, Australia sailed off with a population made up almost entirely of marsupials, and no incoming competition to challenge them, ever again. Which means marsupials got something genuinely rare in evolutionary history. An entire empty continent and no one showing up to tell them they weren't allowed to have it. So they took literally all of it. Every single ecological role you'd expect a proper mammal predator or specialist to fill somewhere else in the world, marsupials filled themselves, from scratch, using completely different starting parts. Take the thylacine. Most people who've heard of it just know it as the Tasmanian tiger, the striped animal that went extinct in the 1930s. But look at its skull next to a wolf's skull sometime. They're almost identical. Same long snout, same spacing of teeth, same general shape built for grabbing and holding on to prey. And yet these two animals do not share a close ancestor for going on 160 million years. Nothing about how a thylacine grows in the womb, well, technically a pouch, has anything in common with how a wolf develops. They just arrived at nearly the same design completely independently, because when you're solving the same problem, chasing down prey on open ground, there's honestly only so many good ways to build the tool for the job. Evolution just kept reaching for the same solution twice, on two different continents, using two totally unrelated starting materials. The marsupial lion took a stranger route to a similar goal. Thylacoleo wasn't related to cats at all. Its closest living relatives are actually wombats and koalas, which sounds almost like a joke until you see what it actually turned into. Instead of the retractable claws a real lion uses, Thylacoleo developed this bizarre, oversized thumb claw on each front paw, curved and razor sharp, more like a blade bolted onto its hand than a normal claw. Its back teeth weren't built for chewing either. They were shaped into long cutting blades, basically built-in scissors, for slicing meat straight off a carcass. Researchers who've tested the mechanics on its skull have found it likely had the strongest bite of any mammal predator that's ever lived. Relative to its size, stronger than a lion, stronger than a tiger, built by an animal whose closest cousin today spends its life eating eucalyptus leaves. It's not just the big predators either. Even something as small and unassuming as the marsupial mole ended up almost perfectly copying an animal on the other side of the planet it has zero relation to. Down under the red sand of the Australian desert lives a small, blind, golden-furred creature with a tough shield of skin over its nose and enormous spade-shaped claws for digging. If you'd never seen one before and someone showed you a photo, you'd probably guess it was one of the golden moles that live in southern Africa. Same blind eyes reduced down to almost nothing, same nose shield, same digging claws, same general shape. But these two animals are not moles in the same family at all. They're not even distantly related in any meaningful way. One is a marsupial, the other is a placental mammal from a completely different continent, and they landed on nearly the exact same body plan, completely independently. Because burrowing blind through sand only really works one particular way, no matter which evolutionary toolkit you're using to build the animal. Even the gentler roles got filled the exact same way. Somewhere out there, a small gliding marsupial is soaring between eucalyptus trees at night, using a stretch of skin between its limbs, doing essentially the exact same trick a flying squirrel does on the other side of the world, despite the two of them having no shared glider ancestor whatsoever. The sugar glider and the flying squirrel just both figured out, completely separately, that a built-in parachute is a genuinely great way to move through a forest canopy without ever needing to be a bird. The scavengers and specialists got the same treatment. A stocky, black-furred marsupial with an almost comically powerful bite for its size ended up filling the same rough niche a hyena fills on other continents, cleaning up carcasses other predators left behind, using jaws strong enough to crunch straight through bone. You know this one already. It's the Tasmanian devil, and its whole lifestyle, scavenging, screeching, powerful jaw over raw speed, is basically a marsupial reinvention of a role placental scavengers, settled into everywhere else. Meanwhile, a small, striped, long-tongued marsupial, called the numbat, quietly became Australia's answer to an anteater, built almost entirely around digging termites out of rotting wood, with a tongue that can stretch out to nearly 10 centimeters, roughly a third of its own body length. Different continent, different family tree entirely. Same basic answer to the same basic problem. How do you make a living eating insects other animals can't be bothered to dig for? Isolation didn't just shape the mammals. It let the reptiles hang on a lot longer than they should have too. On most continents, as mammals slowly got bigger and more dominant over millions of years, large reptiles got pushed further and further down the food chain, eventually losing their grip on the biggest predator roles almost everywhere. Not in Australia. Cut off from that pressure, giant reptiles just kept doing their thing, largely undisturbed. Megalania, a monitor lizard that some estimates put at well over 5 meters long, prowled the landscape as a legitimate apex predator for an absurdly long stretch of time. Quincana, an actual crocodile, but one built with long, upright legs specifically for running down prey on dry land, rather than lurking in water, chased its meals across open ground like nothing else on Earth was doing at the time. And Australia's saltwater crocodiles are still out there today, still functioning as a genuine top predator in their territory, a role crocodilians mostly lost everywhere else on the planet a very long time ago. Then there's the birds, and this is where things get genuinely bizarre. Because isolation didn't just preserve old designs. Sometimes it built something nobody would have predicted from scratch. Somewhere around 8 million years ago, Australia's forests were home to a bird called Dromornis sturtoni, standing close to 3 meters tall and weighing somewhere around half a ton, making it, by most estimates, the largest bird that has ever lived on this planet. Here's the part that throws people off completely. Despite the terrifying nickname it eventually picked up, Demon Duck of Doom, this thing wasn't related to ostriches or emus or any of the big flightless birds you'd normally assume. Its closest living relatives are ducks and geese. One researcher who studied its bones put it about as well as anyone could, describing it as basically what you get when evolution hands a chicken free reign over an entire empty continent with nothing around to stop it from getting big. And it worked spectacularly for around 25 million years. Later relatives of these giant birds, smaller but still enormous compared to anything alive today, actually survived long enough to cross paths with the very first humans to reach Australia, somewhere around 50,000 years ago. Aboriginal oral traditions from parts of Victoria still describe a giant bird called the Mihirung Peringmal, hunted by the ancestors of people who are still telling that story today, which means, if the timing lines up the way some researchers think it does, real people may have genuinely hunted a duck the size of a small car. All that isolation also seems to have pushed a completely different kind of evolutionary trend into overdrive: venom. Australia today is home to a genuinely absurd concentration of venomous animals, more than almost anywhere else on the planet packed into one place. Several of the most toxic snakes on Earth live here. The ocean brings box jellyfish and the blue-ringed octopus, an animal small enough to sit in your palm and dangerous enough to be genuinely lethal. On land, funnel web spiders build burrows in suburban backyards. Even the platypus, an animal most people think of as harmless and a little goofy looking, carries a venomous spur on its hind leg sharp enough to put a grown adult in serious pain for days. Nobody's entirely sure why isolation produced quite so many separate venomous lineages in one place, but the leading idea is straightforward enough. When an ecosystem runs largely undisturbed for tens of millions of years, with no outside competition sweeping in to interrupt things, slow, highly specialized adaptations like venom actually get the uninterrupted time they need to fully develop and stick around, instead of getting wiped out early by some newly arrived competitor before they ever get the chance to mature. And then there's the platypus and the echidna, arguably the strangest survivors of them all. These are monotremes, the only mammals left anywhere on Earth that still lay eggs instead of giving birth to live young. Everywhere else on the planet, this entire branch of the mammal family tree died out a very long time ago, quietly replaced by marsupials and placental mammals doing the same jobs more efficiently. Only in Australia, protected by that same wall of isolation, did monotremes manage to hang on all the way to the present day. Every time you look at a platypus, you're not just looking at a weird-looking animal. You're looking at a living leftover from an evolutionary branch that vanished everywhere else on the planet, one that only survived here because nothing new ever arrived to finish the job. For more than 30 million years, this is what isolation built: a marsupial-run world with no placental competition anywhere in sight, giant reptiles that should have been retired millions of years earlier, a duck the size of a horse, and one of the most concentrated collections of venomous animals found anywhere on the planet. A genuinely complete, self-contained evolutionary experiment running exactly as long as nothing from outside ever showed up to interrupt it. Except nothing lasts forever, and eventually, something did show up. Humans reached Australia by boat somewhere around 65,000 years ago, and life there adjusted, the way it always eventually does when something genuinely new enters a closed system. But the real disruption, the one this isolated world had absolutely no evolutionary answer for, came a lot more recently, and a lot faster. When European ships arrived in 1788, they didn't just bring people. They brought foxes, they brought cats, they brought rabbits. All of them proper, sharp, fast placental predators and competitors, the exact category of animal this ecosystem had been completely sealed off from for over 30 million years straight. And the marsupial-dominated world underneath them had never once had to develop a defense against anything like that, because it had simply never needed to. The results were about as brutal as you'd expect. Australia now holds the grim record for the highest rate of mammal extinction of any place on the planet in recorded history, with roughly 38 native mammal species driven to extinction since colonization began, and dozens more still hanging on the edge today. Feral cats alone are now estimated to kill tens of millions of native animals across the country in a single night, not over a year. A single night. So here's the part that's genuinely hard to sit with. The very same isolation that spent 30 million uninterrupted years quietly building one of the strangest, most original ecosystems this planet has ever produced is the exact same thing that left it with absolutely no defense the one time the outside world finally, actually broke through. 30 million years to build something this strange and this singular. Less than 250 to nearly lose it. Australia is still out there today, still home to more of that original, isolated experiment than almost anywhere else on Earth. The platypus, the echidna, the last living scraps of a world built entirely alone. It's just a lot smaller and a lot more fragile than the version that spent 30 million years growing completely undisturbed in a room nobody else on the planet ever managed to open. If this one stuck with you, subscribe for more of the strangest evolutionary stories this continent has ever produced.